Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your natal Mercury sextiling Pluto. I already have a video with the trine, which is another harmonious angle, and usually I lump them together. I don't know why I didn't in that case, but I wanted to cover those who have the sextile because this is something that is, I think it's an important aspect. Mercury is the way that we communicate, but it's not just with other people, it's with ourselves. So, what is communication with ourselves? Well, isn't that our thoughts? So, just, straight out of the gate, you can say that somebody with this sextile is a deep thinker. And that means that they're, because Pluto represents what lies beneath. So when people are shallow thinkers, they're talking and thinking about things on the surface of life. So we could say how things look, how versus how they really are. Something can look really good and it could be rotten to the core, right? So that's why you have to deepen your thinking, people, if you want to engage life in a more meaningful way. And I even think the word meaningful could describe Pluto because of the depth. Things that are superficial, they kind of are like fast food. They kind of like satisfy people very briefly, but they dissolve very quickly. This can actually affect a person's, I would say, their intelligence levels. Well, we tend to think of intellectual capacity because intelligence, somebody could be really, they could score high on an IQ test and be very proficient as far as things like math and sciences, and maybe they don't have a profound grasp of life itself. Um, and one of the things that can be very interesting about this is that I believe that being curious about things and having a passion for things, and I would associate Pluto, you could almost call it an obsession sometimes, with different things, that spurs people on to want to learn about them. And you could almost characterize people that are shallow thinkers as lacking intellectual curiosity about life, or maybe about a lot of things in life. Maybe they have one area that they semi care about, but they really don't, not in general. And I would say, even with Mercury, that you could extend that to life itself, because how can you be passionate about uncovering truths and be very curious and not have an investment in life? Because when you have an investment in life, you really want to understand it better. I just see people and they're just going through the motions, and that kind of reflects their lack of intellectual curiosity. So I would say that is also true, and the ability to analyze is going to be present as well. And I feel that there is intuitive gifts with this aspect. So it's not just about the intellect, but it's also about the intuition, which is the higher mind, which is your higher self. So being connected to that, and that that ability to be able to um, work with profound or deep subject matters and really unpack them, I think can be a great asset in different professions. Like if you were, I guess, a researcher, that would be a given, but also someone who is a teacher, an educator, professor, because there's going to be something with your delivery that is going to be compelling to other people. They're going to sit up and take notice of what you're saying. So, somebody who is a lecturer, a public speaker of some sort, is going to be very magnetizing to their audience. The audience is not going to get bored with how they deliver information. I think this aspect can benefit somebody in a variety of different ways. I mean, and I'm not saying everything that we do is connected to careers and making money. So let me get that out of the way. But in terms of that, sales, a person like this can be very persuasive. There's power behind your words. And so this person could sell, they say, ice to the Inuits. Isn't that the new way of saying Eskimos? And really mean it. It's not just like a used car salesman or something. One of the characteristics of Pluto is taboo subjects, and and we can also say things that are macabre. So horror. If you are somebody who is an avid reader, which you probably are with this combination, you probably would like true crime. You probably would like mysteries and taboo subjects, things that are dark. And, for careers, I mean, if you were some kind of criminal psychologist, being a psychologist in general, that's another one I should just mention, but a criminal, what do they call that? Well, even like I was going to say forensics, which I think that means like the clues of the crime and all of that. You would be great for that. And so these kinds of professions require special people because you could call it rather heavy, like just the criminal justice system in general is kind of like dark, and yet this is where you excel. You're not afraid to go there. You're not afraid to, if you were a psychologist, you might be somebody who really is interested in the seedy underbelly of life. For some people, even if they have an interest in emotions and that's what attracts them to a profession like psychology, they might end up getting burnt out because the dark wins out. It's like, oh wow, I didn't know so many people were suffering from these mental maladies or whatever you want to call them, and it just can get too much. But that might be something that really doesn't faze you. Of course, this is just one aspect, and you have to look at your chart as a whole to see if that, if that really plays out altogether. Because, I mean, you could even have Mercury in Scorpio. You could have Mercury in the 8th house, and that would enhance that scorpionic flavor of this aspect. And that might be too much, in some cases, even though it would be accurate to say that these things are true of you, it might be like, oh wow, this is just like really intense. But I want to talk about what could be problematic with this. First of all, when you are interested in things like I have the sun in the eighth house, and you'll see that some of these planets, especially I think the personal planets are interchangeable to some degree. When they're in the same house or the same sign, you're going to get similar themes. They're not going to be exactly the same, obviously, but so having the sun in the eighth house means that I also had some of those interests and still do to a certain extent. But I think at some point I realized that I had to protect my energy. I had to, you can go into that darkness or depravity too much, and that could be detrimental to your well-being. So you have to balance it out. You know, if if this is just something you're very interested in, balance it out with the light. If you're going to read a book about a serial killer, at least read a book about a saint um, who lived a life of purity and greatly benefited the planet. Because when you just get like I guess the bigger picture here is that there can be an obsessive mental nature, and so a person can get very obsessed about certain subject matters, and that can, depending on what they are, if they're very dark, that could affect them adversely overall. And plus, it's always good to kind of, I feel like it's good to, it's just like when people eat the same foods all the time. They're neglecting other nutrients. I think having healthy obsessions, I don't even like the word obsession, I would say passions, is great because it means that there is some area or areas in life where it just lights you up like a Christmas tree. The thing is, definitely nourish those passions, but keep in mind that there are other things that might also be exciting to you. And, like for instance, if you love a certain artist, that's awesome. And I'm like, I guess I wasn't thinking of a visual artist. I was thinking more like, let's say, a musician, a band, and you're just totally into them. By all means, just indulge yourself, but also um, always be like expanding your sphere of influence because, there could be other passions awaiting you. One thing that this could produce is somebody who is a conspiracy, what I call realist, not and of course it is a conspiracy theorist because, but the reason I call myself a realist is because I don't think it's in the realm of possibility. I think it's true, but we can't just automatically believe whatever we hear, even if it's alternative and it's a conspiracy. But so that's why we say theorist, because just like with Mercury in Scorpio and Mercury in the eighth house, a person with this, or a person with Mercury in conjunction with Pluto, you're not going to take things at face value. That's just not how you roll. You're always going to sense that there's more to the story. And part of this can be your intuition, no doubt about it. Again, even I have found out through generating my Vedic chart, which you might, there are free generators online. You can do that. I have found out that in Vedic astrology, I have the Sun and Mercury in Scorpio. So instead of Sagittarius, I have both of those in Sag in my Western horoscope. So uh, there is some, I was going to say some alternative universe, but it doesn't even have to be that, where I am Mercury in Scorpio. And let me tell you, or you could even say having the sun in the eighth house. I, I didn't even know this about myself until I started to do these readings. And these videos, and also personal readings too, because it's something that, unless you really are thinking about it, it just comes naturally to you. With you, this may be something that is kind of stoked through your interest in a particular topic. But this could be something, because any contact to Pluto, even what we would call in a simplistic way a positive contact to Pluto, the sextile, will still produce that kind of intensity, and that can be challenging at times. So this is what I want to say, is that catch yourself. If you have a tendency to have a suspicious mind, and I think with the harmonious angles, the person may have a lot more elan. In other words, they might have a lot more gracious tendencies to be able to express themselves without, giving people the third degree, but it still may be running in the background where you're always kind of suspicious of people's motives, or at least wondering about them, or speculating, maybe thinking everything is a conspiracy. um, so watch for that, because sometimes it can veer into cynicism or just conveying suspicion to others, and that could be off-putting for them because they feel like they're guilty of something that they haven't done. And like I said, I even have exhibited this, and I've had a partner for many years, and he was saying, that I ask all these questions, and it's almost like an interrogation or something, and I don't know I'm doing this consciously. I just feel like I have to get to the bottom of the truth, even if it's something like, hey, where where did you go today when you took your walk, and just really like, giving somebody the third degree. So be careful, because other people may find themselves feeling very uncomfortable with your approach. But perhaps with the sextile, there is a more, an easier way of that you, or a more harmonious way that you do this, but you might still tend to do it, is my point. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.